think about what your eyes are doing, like right this very second.
Right.
If you're like most of us, they're probably locked onto some sort of glowing rectangle, just completely unblinking, while your brain absorbs this absolute fire hose of digital data.
Totally.
And you aren't really looking at anything, right? Welcome to today's deep dive, by the way. So glad to have you with us for this one. But yeah, you're just letting a screen project light into your pupils while your body sits there entirely static.
We pay a massive physical and mental price for that passivity, you know? I just consider the chronic headaches, the dry eyes.
Oh, the dry eyes are the worst.
Yeah. Or that shallow chest breathing you don't even realize you're doing until you finally, peel yourself away from your laptop at the end of the day.
Seriously.
We are walking around with profound screen fatigue, basically treating our vision as if it's just a default setting. Like it's something that happens to us rather than a skill we actively participate in.
Right. Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We're exploring how to shift from being just a passive receiver of visual data into, well, an active performer of your vision.
Exactly.
And based on the stack of sources we have today, this shift doesn't just restore deteriorating eyesight. It actually has the potential to fundamentally rewire your nervous system.
Yeah, and to understand how this all works, we're synthesizing a really fascinating mix of material today. First, we're looking at an ebook titled The Complete Practitioner's Guide to the Active Gaze Method.
Right.
And alongside that, we have these deeply personal accounts from the method's creator, Christopher McClure, who, intriguingly, goes by the moniker AI Jesus on his Meditation Happy Hour platform.
Which is quite the name.
It really is. But grounding all of this modern practice, we're also examining visual diagrams of a centuries-old Tibetan eye chart. And this deep dive is really going to challenge everything you assume about looking at the world. We're moving from this very medicalized, eye muscle approach to a holistic, somatic, or body-centered wisdom.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the ebook uses an analogy that just hit me right between the eyes.
Oh, the chip analogy.
Yes. It argues that treating vision as a passive biological function is basically the equivalent of accidentally eating an entire family-sized bag of potato chips while Netflix binging.
We've all been there.
Right. You get to the bottom of the bag and realize you didn't actually taste a single chip.
Yeah.
You were completely checked out of the process, just acting on pure autopilot.
And we only really seem to notice our vision when the machinery starts breaking down,
Yeah, like when the text on your phone blurs and you immediately reach for reading glasses.
Exactly. Or when the fluorescent lights at the office trigger a migraine, so you just squint and rub your temples.
Right.
The standard medicalized approach tells us that vision is just a mechanical failure of the eyeball that needs some external fix.
Right.
And it completely ignores the somatic connection we actually have to our sight.
So to understand how to reclaim that connection, and turn vision into an active skill, we have to look at where this specific method originated. And the origin story is incredibly vivid.
It really is.
It starts over 50 years ago with Christopher McClure in Boulder, Colorado. He walks into this upstairs metaphysical bookstore on the Pearl Street Mall, specifically between 13th and 14th Street.
Just right above an old movie theater, yeah.
Yeah. And he ends up buying this 11 by 17 piece of heavy stock paper. And this was the Tibetan eye chart.
And looking at the visual diagrams of this chart from our sources, it is absolutely striking. If you're picturing the standard optometry chart with the giant E at the top.
Oh, yeah. Throw that image completely away.
Totally.
It's not even close. It looks almost like a complex, high-contrast mandala or maybe like a geometric snowflake.
Right, with that distinct, heavy center point.
Yeah, and radiating out from that center are these straight lines that intersect with intricate, tiered geometric pillars. They look a bit like stacked pagodas, actually, and they terminate in these solid black circles at the far outer edges of the paper.
And the way the Tibetan monks originally designed this to be used is entirely kinetic. You don't sit back in a chair and passively stare at it.
Yeah.
You literally stand up and put your nose right against the center point of the paper.
Wow.
And from there, you use your eyes to trace the incredibly complex, jagged in and out edges of these geometric shapes. You follow the entire perimeter of the wheel clockwise, and then, you reverse the process and trace it counterclockwise.
And the monks developed this because they understood a biological reality that modern screen culture just entirely ignores. Your eyes are controlled by physical muscles.
Right.
You have 6 extraocular muscles wrapping around each eyeball. And just like your biceps, or your hamstrings, those muscles require a use it or lose it exercise routine. Yeah. If you spend 12 hours a day staring at a monitor, exactly 18 inches from your face,
Mm-hmm.
those muscles just lock into a single focal length.
Yeah.
They lose their elasticity. They literally atrophy.
I mean, it's the equivalent of keeping your arm in a cast for months and then wondering why your elbow refuses to bend.
Yeah.
The Tibetan chart was designed to force those extraocular muscles through their absolute maximum range of physical motion.
Wait, I have to interject with a practical pushback here, though,
Sure.
because I understand the biology, but I cannot imagine pinning a giant geometric poster to my office door and standing with my nose pressed against it for 20 minutes every single day.
Yeah, your coworkers would have some questions.
They would think I was having a breakdown.
Huh.
How is that remotely practical for a modern listener trying to just, get through a workday?
Well, that exact friction, the impracticality of carrying a poster everywhere, is actually what led Christopher McCord to his massive breakthrough.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he'd been using the physical paper chart rigorously, and then he just had this sudden epiphany. The magic wasn't in the heavy stock paper or the black ink. The magic was entirely in the biological action of the eye tracing a sharp edge.
Oh, so he realized he could throw the paper away and just trace the edges of literally anything in his environment.
Exactly. The jagged ridge of a distant mountain, the erratic, squiggly edge of a houseplant leaf.
Or just the curved silhouette of a coffee mug sitting on his desk.
Right. And he called this action contouring. It effectively turns the entire physical world into an infinite, invisible etch-sketch for your eyes.
The world itself becomes the training chart.
Oh.
But looking at the text, the rhythm of the contour, we should clarify a strict rule about the mechanics here.
Oh, yes. Very important.
When you are contouring that coffee mug, you are not moving your head. You aren't swaying your neck or your shoulders. The text explicitly states this is not a full-body moving meditation.
Right.
The body remains entirely still. Only the eyes are moving along the contour.
Which honestly sounds incredibly intense at first pass. Like if you're just fiercely tracking the edge of a mug with your eyes while holding your body perfectly still.
Yeah, that could so easily turn into a stressful, hyper-focused staring contest. You'd just be introducing more tension into your face.
And what's fascinating here is that this is exactly why the active gaze method requires 3 specific somatic anchors.
Oh.
These physical anchors are designed to prevent the practice from devolving into that stressful staring. The first anchor is you drop your conscious attention down into your physical center of gravity, which is located about 3 fingers below your navel and 3 fingers inward.
So you're taking the highest, most hyperactive part of your sensory awareness, your vision, and anchoring it deep in your belly.
Yes. And the second anchor works right in tandem with that first one. You place your tongue lightly on the upper palate, right behind your front teeth.
Which in Eastern internal arts is said to complete an energetic key circuit.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. But even from a purely physiological standpoint, engaging those cranial nerves promotes immediate systemic relaxation.
Fascinating.
And then the third anchor is conscious breath. But crucially, you aren't doing like heavy, forced Wim Hof breathing. You are breathing softly and naturally with the mental intention of using your breath to sort of wrap your physical body around the shape you're visually contouring.
So bringing those 3 physical anchors together manually overrides the body's stress response.
Right.
Because usually when we stare intensely at something, our sympathetic nervous system kicks into high gear. We unconsciously hold our breath, our shoulders creep up toward our ear.
Our field of vision narrows.
Yes, but by focusing on the dantian, touching the tongue to the palate, and softening the breath, you signal to your brain that you are completely safe. You ground your entire visual field in a relaxed parasympathetic state.
And here's where we transition from simply relaxing the eye muscles into fundamentally altering the brain's architecture.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yes, because the neuroscience presented in the ebook highlights that a massive 30% of the human cortex is involved in visual processing.
30%? That's huge.
It is. By changing the mechanical way we move our eyes, we're literally leveraging neural plasticity. We're reorganizing our internal psychological wiring.
Now, I really have to push back on this claim, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Are the sources genuinely suggesting that moving my eyes over the edge of a coffee mug is going to stop? Like a full-blown emotional trigger or a panic attack? Because that sounds like a massive leap from an eye exercise to instant therapy.
It does sound like a monumental leap, yeah. Until we look closely at the mechanism of bilateral integration.
Okay, what is that?
Well, when you're contouring a complex shape, your eyes are rhythmically sweeping left to right, up and down, constantly crossing the midline of your vision. That specific rhythmic bilateral eye movement activates the prefrontal cortex in the exact same biological manner that EMDR therapy does.
Wait, EMDR, like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Exactly. The gold standard therapeutic modality used globally for processing severe trauma and regulating the nervous system.
Wow.
To understand why it works, we have to look at the amygdala, right? The brain's threat detection center. When you're emotionally triggered, your amygdala gets stuck in this hyper-aroused alarm state. Your rational brain just shuts down.
Right, the fight or flight response.
Yeah. And in EMDR therapy, a clinician has you follow their finger back and forth across your field of vision while recalling a stressor.
Well, we've seen that.
That left-to-right eye movement forces the left and right hemispheres of your brain to rapidly communicate. It taxes your working memory just enough to downgrade the intense emotional charge of the trigger, signaling to the amygdala that the threat has passed. Active gaze, through contouring, is quietly mimicking that exact therapeutic mechanism on demand.
That makes so much sense. And McCord actually shared a deeply personal, concrete example of this in his Meditation Happy Hour account.
He did, yeah.
He described this recent week where he was hit with two genuine, severe emotional storms, like real internal triggers that would normally send him spiraling for days.
Right.
But both times, instead of letting the panic take over, he applied the active gaze method. He dropped his awareness to his dantian, touched his tongue to his palate, found an object in the room, and simply started contouring its edges.
And what happened?
He reported that within just 5 minutes, the intense emotional storm completely broke. His heart rate slowed, the panic dissolved, and he was returned to a state of total, grounded objectivity.
I mean, taking 5 minutes to manually regulate a triggered nervous system simply by tracing the geometry of an object, that is an incredibly empowering tool.
Absolutely.
It pulls the practitioner entirely out of the chaotic, subjective narrative of their internal emotional state and anchors them forcefully to the objective physical reality of the present moment.
And to help you, the listener, actually implement this, the sources distill the entire methodology down into a framework called the ERRC philosophy.
Yeah.
ERRC.
Right, let's break that down.
E stands for eliminate. We must eliminate the passivity of just receiving sight, ditching the idea that vision is just a camera lens taking in light.
Then R is for reduce. We need to actively reduce our habitual visual fixation. Break the hypnotic trance of that static screen staring that completely dominates modern life.
Yeah, that's a tough one. The second R is for raise. We raise the absolute importance of dantian awareness and soft breathing. Because without those physical anchors, contouring is just stressful staring.
Exactly. And finally, C is for create. We create a daily micro-practice. The ultimate goal isn't to sit on a meditation cushion for 20 isolated minutes and then spend the rest of the day staring dead-eyed at a laptop.
Right.
The goal is to dissolve the barrier between the practice and your normal waking life.
But the ebook doesn't just leave us with an acronym, right? It actually lays out a progressive 6-week evolutionary program.
Yes. And it's structured this way because the extraocular muscles and those neural pathways genuinely need time to build stamina and adapt.
Makes sense. You wouldn't run a marathon on day one.
Exactly. So the first phase, covering weeks 1 and 2, is all about laying the foundation. You aren't trying to heal your trauma or fix your vision overnight. You're just establishing those 3 somatic pillars, the dantian, the tongue, the breath. You might start by contouring the geometric lines of the Tibetan eye chart just to get the physical sensation of the eye movement. Then you take it off the page and trace simple nearby objects in your environment, like an office fern, the spine of a book, or a window frame.
Then we move into the expansion phase in week 3. You take the gaze outside to tackle much larger, more complex exterior shapes.
Right.
So you trace the jagged, chaotic canopy of a tree line against the sky, or the slowly billowing, unpredictable edge of a cumulus cloud.
And then week 5 introduces dimensional transitions, which is where the physical biology gets the serious work out.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
Yeah. You close one eye, and you begin by meticulously tracing an object incredibly close to your face, like the tip of your own nose, or maybe a finger held an inch away. Then, maintaining that sharp focus, you smoothly shift your gaze to trace something on the extreme distant horizon.
Let's talk about the mechanics of why that near-far transition is so vital. It targets the ciliary muscles, which are the tiny muscles inside the eye that control the shape of the lens.
Right.
When you look at your phone, the ciliary muscle contracts, making the lens thicker to focus up close. If you look at your phone for 10 hours, that muscle is locked in a state of continuous contraction. It's basically a permanent muscle spasm.
Wow.
So when you finally look at the horizon, the muscle is supposed to relax and flatten the lens, but it's too fatigued to let go. That near-far transition acts as physical therapy, forcing the ciliary muscle to finally release its tension and stretch.
Which naturally leads to the ultimate question of tangible physical results, right?
Right. But what are the actual physical results? Does this mean I can throw away my glasses?
Okay. Well, for the proof, we have to examine Christopher McCore's own documented results. As he aged, and notably after he spent several years doing intense internal, eyes-closed visualization practices, his external eyesight began to severely degrade.
Oh, really?
Yeah. His vision blurred, he was losing his edge, and he found himself relying on stronger glasses just to navigate his day.
So he realized his external eye muscles had atrophied, right? And he went back to the laboratory of his own practice. He rededicated himself to the raw physical mechanics of active gaze.
Exactly.
He performed those near-far transition exercises in bed every single morning, tracing from his nose to the horizon. He brought the physical Tibetan eye chart back into his routine. And critically, he added a non-negotiable 5-minute midday contouring session just to break up his screen time and stabilize his focal length.
And the outcome was profound. He rehabilitated his external vision to the point where he now only requires glasses for reading microscopic print or, for unfamiliar night driving.
That's credible.
The vast majority of his waking life is entirely glasses-free. He literally retrained the musculature of his eyes to see clearly again.
That physical restoration is amazing, but the sources actually take this one step further.
Yeah.
The final phase of the program pushes past just achieving 20/20 vision and enters what the ebook calls spiritual presence.
Yes.
Because most of us walk through our days in a state of visual hypervigilance. Our eyes are darting around unconsciously, constantly scanning our environment for threats,
Right.
which keeps our nervous system permanently locked in a low-grade fight-or-flight state. Our field of vision is contracted, and because of that, our sense of self feels contracted and defensive.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, shifting into active gaze dismantles that hypervigilance. The eyes become fluid, open, and receptive rather than sharp and defensive.
Yeah.
The ebook connects the state to a profound shift into non-dual awareness, making a really fascinating reference to the sci-fi author Robert Heinlein and his 1961 novel Stranger in a Strange Land. Heinlein coined a concept known as groking.
Oh, to grok something. That means to understand it so entirely, so deeply, that the barrier between the observer and the observed completely dissolves. You merge with the thing you're focusing on.
Exactly. So applying that to our vision, when you are truly deeply contouring the physical edge of a leaf, securely anchored in your deep breath and your center of gravity, a psychological shift occurs.
Right.
Your brain stops using language to label the object. It stops saying, oh, that is a green leaf. Instead, you are grounding your consciousness purely in the raw sensory geometry of the shape in space.
It's beautiful, really.
It is. The harsh, stressful boundary between you and here and the leaf out there begins to evaporate. You aren't just observing the world as a passive bystander anymore. You are physically and energetically participating in its existence.
So what does this ultimately mean for you listening to this right now? We've taken a deep dive into how an incredibly complex ancient Tibetan wheel evolved by way of a metaphysical bookstore in Boulder into a highly practical modern somatic tool.
Yeah.
It is a biological antidote designed specifically to combat the screen-addicted, static-staring, high-stressed reality of modern life.
And it serves as a powerful reminder that we possess so much more agency over our own biology and our psychological state than we typically realize. Like, we are not just passive victims of screen fatigue and anxiety.
No, we're not. The universe is offering you an infinite eye yoga studio every single second of the day, no matter where you are.
Literally anywhere.
Right. So the next time you find yourself profoundly bored and staring blankly during a Zoom meeting, or more importantly, the next time you feel a massive emotional trigger tightening your chest, do not reach for your phone to numb out.
Please don't.
Do not close your eyes and let the panic spiral. Instead, anchor your attention 3 fingers below your navel. Press your tongue lightly to the roof of your mouth. Breathe naturally. And actively trace the delicate silhouette of your coffee mug.
It's that simple.
As the ebook so brilliantly summarizes the entire philosophy, you don't need sharper glasses. You need a quieter mind behind your eyes.
That is such a great quote. But leaving you with one final provocative thread to pull today. We look back to week 4 of the program, the interior exploration phase.
Oh, right.
We have established that actively contouring the physical, awake reality around you can rehabilitate your eyesight, soothe your amygdala, and regulate your nervous system.
Right.
But what happens when you turn this active, highly conscious gaze entirely inward? When you lay down and close your eyes tonight and you begin actively contouring the random flashes of light, the phosphenes and the hypnagogic dream shapes drifting in the dark behind your eyelids. Could you actually train your optic nerve to consciously step into and perhaps even control the architecture of your own dreams?
That is definitely something fascinating to experiment with the next time you close your eyes.